It was a cold Friday afternoon when everything changed. The kind of day when the air feels thick with anticipation, but you can't put your finger on why. I walked into my office, ready to wrap up the week, just like any other Friday. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, the faint sound of printers and keyboards tapping creating the usual hum of a busy corporate environment. I was just finishing up a project proposal for a potential client when I got the text from Marcus. "Can you come to my office?" I frowned, glancing at the time. It was 3:45 p.m., and I knew that after today, the office would empty out for the weekend. Maybe Marcus just wanted to talk about some details for the Horizon contract I had been working tirelessly on for the last several months. Nothing unusual. Or so I thought. I walked down the corridor, past cubicles and glass-walled offices where my colleagues were wrapping up their day. When I knocked and entered Marcus's office, I noticed his posture immediately. His usual confident stance was gone. He was sitting back in his leather chair, hands clasped in front of him, staring at the monitor on his desk. It was like something wasn't right, and the unsettling feeling in my stomach confirmed it. "Close the door, Cassandra," Marcus said, his voice steady, but there was an edge to it that made me tense up. I did as he asked, sitting down across from him. "I've been reviewing your progress," Marcus began, his eyes finally meeting mine, "and the Horizon contract is looking great. The team is pleased with your efforts, but..." He trailed off, staring at his hands for a moment, as if searching for the right words. I couldn't help but feel a spike of confusion. Was he about to congratulate me? I had worked so hard, spent countless nights away from home negotiating the deal, customizing proposals, flying across the country to meet with Horizon's executives. It felt like my efforts should have been met with praise, but instead there was something off. "What?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral, though I could feel the tension rising in my chest. "The thing is," Marcus continued, not meeting my eyes, "with recent changes in leadership, we're making some adjustments to streamline operations. Unfortunately, your position is being eliminated." The words hit me like a slap. I could feel the blood draining from my face, my thoughts racing to catch up with the reality of what he had just said. "Wait, what?" My voice cracked as I tried to process what was happening. My position is being eliminated? But we just secured the Horizon deal. That contract is worth millions. Marcus sighed, leaning back in his chair and crossing his arms over his chest. "I know it's a tough pill to swallow, but we're reorganizing the territory to align with the company's new direction. I know you've put a lot of work into this, but these changes are necessary for the company's growth." My chest tightened and my heart pounded in my ears. "So, after all the work I put into this company, after everything I've contributed, you're letting me go?" I could barely keep my voice steady, but I managed to hold back the tears that were threatening to spill out. It wasn't like me to cry, but this wasn't just a job, it was my life. Marcus remained unmoved, staring at his desk. "I know it's hard, but the company needs to move in a different direction. We're giving you 2 weeks of severance, and HR will give you the details on your final paychecks and benefits." 2 weeks. Severance. It felt like a slap in the face. Was that it? Just like that? After years of loyalty, after months of my blood, sweat, and tears, I was being discarded? And the worst part? Marcus didn't even care. "I've already given everything I've got to this company, Marcus," I said, my voice colder now. "And this is how you repay me?" He didn't respond. He just glanced at his phone, eyes scanning the screen like I wasn't even sitting there. "I'll gather my things and leave," I said, standing up. My stomach churned and I could feel a lump in my throat. The room spun for a moment as I walked out, my footsteps echoing down the hall like a countdown. I didn't even know where to begin, how to tell my family, my friends, that after everything, after putting my life into my career, I had been let go. And for what? Some corporate restructuring that I knew wasn't about performance. It was about something else. As I passed my colleagues on the way to my desk, I saw pity in their eyes. I could feel their silent judgment, their relief that they hadn't been the ones called into the office. It was a cold, suffocating atmosphere, and I hated every second of it. They all knew what was coming. They had seen it in the way that Marcus had started pulling back from me over the past several months. The subtle change in tone, the way he delegated important meetings to others when he'd always relied on me before. I stopped at my desk, grabbing the few personal items I had, the framed photos of my family, the coffee mug my daughter had given me for my birthday, my computer, the tool that had helped me land every deal in the last 5 years. And as I packed, I realized that I had no idea what was next. What did a future look like when the thing you had given everything for was suddenly gone? The hardest part, though, was seeing Jenna standing at the reception desk, the intern I had personally trained, the one who had watched me every day, learned from my mistakes, and now would take my place. She met my eyes and quickly looked away, a faint trace of guilt on her face. She knew what had just happened. Everyone in the office knew. But this wasn't about Jenna. This wasn't even about Marcus. It was about me. I had to keep going. I couldn't let them win. I finished packing up my things, trying not to let the tears fall. The worst part wasn't the job loss. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was that I had been played. "Cassandra, I'm so sorry," Violet from accounting whispered as she passed. "I know this isn't right." I managed to smile, though it felt hollow. "It's just business," I said, trying to convince myself. Right? But I knew it wasn't. It wasn't just business. It was personal.
The drive home was a blur. I couldn't focus on the road, couldn't concentrate on the traffic. I'd been let go. No, fired. Discarded. I had spent over 5 years cultivating relationships, building my reputation in the optics industry, and navigating complex negotiations. And just like that, it was all gone. The whole future I had envisioned for myself at Veltric was stripped away, leaving me with nothing but the severance check in my pocket. My phone buzzed incessantly in the car, the screen lighting up with notifications from my coworkers. The last thing I wanted was to hear from them, so I silenced it. I didn't need their sympathy or their awkwardly worded, "Sorry to hear about what happened." It wasn't their fault. The blame lay squarely on Marcus and his corporate restructuring decisions. But in a way, I was also angry at myself for not seeing it coming sooner. I had worked so hard, given so much, that it never crossed my mind they might replace me when I was at the peak of my success. When I reached my apartment, I barely remembered parking. The sound of my keys hitting the counter felt hollow in the quiet of the room. I leaned against the kitchen counter, feeling completely drained, both physically and emotionally. I wanted to scream, to throw something, but what would that accomplish? Instead, I just stood there, breathing deeply, trying to steady my racing heart. It wasn't the first time I'd been let down by people I trusted. My father had always warned me about the politics of business, how loyalty only worked one way in the corporate world. He had built his wealth from nothing, but it was a lonely road. He'd taught me to never let my guard down, never trust anyone who wouldn't hesitate to cut you loose when things got tough. But I had chosen to ignore that advice, thinking that if I worked hard enough, I could make my mark in this world. And yet, here I was, betrayed and alone. I threw myself on the couch, my phone still buzzing. I knew I couldn't ignore it forever. The texts, the calls, they were relentless. Finally, I picked it up, letting out a long sigh before answering the first one that came through. "Cassandra, are you okay?" It was from Jonah, the CEO of Horizon Innovations. He had been a key part of the deal I'd just secured with Veltric. We'd spent hours together during the negotiations, and I'd always appreciated his straightforwardness and calm demeanor. I'd trusted him more than most people I had worked with. "I'm not really," I replied. "I just got fired." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "What? Why?" "They're restructuring, cutting positions. My position was eliminated." "I'm sorry to hear that. But listen, you don't have to worry about Horizon. We'll keep our commitment. We're sticking with you. I don't care about the company politics. You've been a great partner, and I'll make sure that you're recognized for your efforts." I felt a small knot in my chest loosen, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't the comfort I needed. I appreciated Jonah's loyalty, but what did that really mean if I had nothing left? We talked for a while longer, Jonah asking about my plans and trying to reassure me, but I couldn't shake the feeling of loss. I ended the call and leaned back into the couch, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in years, I didn't have a plan. No next step, no backup. Just a terrifying emptiness. But that didn't last long. After a few minutes of brooding in silence, I took a deep breath, pushing myself off the couch. I needed to think clearly. I needed to figure out what I was going to do next and fast. I couldn't let Marcus's betrayal be the end of me. I wasn't the kind of person who would let someone push me out of my career just like that. I had worked too hard to let it all slip away. I sat at my desk, opening my laptop. I hadn't had time to think much about it during the whirlwind of the past few hours, but now I realized that I had options. My severance pay would cover me for the next few months, but I wasn't about to sit around and wait for things to get worse. I could start over. I could fight back. I opened up my email and started drafting a message to my network. I wasn't going to be silent. I wasn't going to let Veltric's betrayal go unnoticed. The Horizon contract was my ticket to bigger things, and with my experience, my industry connections, and my reputation, I had the tools to succeed on my own. The message I sent out was simple. Hello, friends and colleagues. As of today, I am no longer with Veltric Optics. I'm exploring new opportunities and am open to connecting with those who value integrity, hard work, and building lasting partnerships. If you know of any openings or projects where I could contribute, please don't hesitate to reach out. I paused before hitting send, but something inside me told me it was the right move. There was power in honesty. There was power in owning the situation. I was no longer an employee. I was an entrepreneur in the making. I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes for a moment. This was it. The turning point I'd been dreading but now had to face head-on. It was going to take time, but I was ready. I would use this setback to fuel my next big move. I had a network of people who knew me, trusted me, and respected my work. I was not done yet. But before I could get too deep into my plans, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Marcus. "We need to talk. This isn't over." I smiled bitterly and turned my phone face down. No, Marcus, it's over. But this time, I'm in control.
The week after my dismissal from Veltric was a blur of emotions and decisions. For the first time in a long while, I was forced to sit with myself, to truly reflect on my life and my career. I had always been so focused on climbing the corporate ladder, on proving myself to others, that I never took the time to assess my own happiness. And now, here I was, at a crossroads, one that I didn't expect, but knew would eventually come. The phone calls and texts from my colleagues continued, but they had started to lose their meaning. Many were sympathetic, others were merely curious about my next steps. But it wasn't the empty pleasantries or well wishes I needed. It was action. It was a plan. I didn't want to be a victim of my circumstances. This wasn't a setback. This was an opportunity. I spent the next few days at home, going through old business contacts, sorting through emails, and reconnecting with people I hadn't spoken to in years. My reputation in the industry was solid, and I knew I had the skills to make a difference. The question wasn't whether or not I could recover, it was about how I would recover. And that's when the idea hit me. Why not build something of my own? Starting my own consulting business wasn't a new concept for me. I had considered it a few times before, but there was always something that held me back. Fear, uncertainty, the comfort of a steady paycheck. But now, with nothing holding me back, the thought of building my own business felt invigorating. It was the perfect opportunity to focus on what truly mattered. Creating lasting partnerships, being true to my integrity, and helping companies grow with the same honesty and passion I had always embodied.
I began researching the steps to start my own business, writing a business plan, identifying potential clients, and understanding the legalities of setting up a consultancy. The idea of consulting for businesses in the optics and tech industries, leveraging my years of experience in negotiations and contract management, seemed like a natural fit. I could offer the expertise that had made me so successful at Veltrick, but this time I would work for myself. The thought of being my own boss, being in control of my future, gave me a sense of empowerment I hadn't felt in years. On the third day after my firing, I called Jonah Freeman. I hadn't spoken to him since the Horizon contract had been finalized. He had been one of the few people I had been able to rely on during the negotiation process, and I knew that he would be a good person to bounce ideas off of. Plus, I needed advice from someone who had been in the business longer than I had. "Hey, Jonah," I said as soon as he picked up. "I need to talk to you about something." "Of course, Cassandra," he replied warmly. "What's going on?" I explained everything. My firing, my plan to start a consulting business, and my desire to continue working with companies like Horizon. Jonah listened patiently, asking questions when necessary, and offering insights based on his vast experience in the industry. "I think you've got the right idea," Jonah said when I finished. "This industry could really benefit from someone like you. Someone with experience, but also the foresight to create real, sustainable solutions. You're not just another sales consultant. You're someone who can make a real difference." That conversation left me feeling more certain about my path forward. Jonah's encouragement meant more than I realized. He had confidence in me, and I realized that I had to have confidence in myself too. It wasn't just about landing contracts or securing business. It was about creating a legacy of integrity and meaningful connections. The next morning, I sat down with my laptop, sketching out the framework for my business. I would offer consulting services for mid-sized companies in the tech and optics industries, focusing on building partnerships, improving sales strategies, and streamlining operational processes. It felt good to get everything on paper, something solid to work toward, but I knew that there was still a lot of work to do. I started reaching out to some of my old contacts, asking if they knew of any companies looking for a consultant. It was slow at first, with most people politely responding, but not offering much more. But the seed was planted. I followed up with a few of the connections I had made at Horizon, offering my services for their upcoming projects. I also reached out to some other firms that had worked with Veltrick, hoping to leverage my reputation in the industry. As the days went by, I started receiving responses. Some people were intrigued by my offer, while others were more cautious. But every conversation brought me closer to my goal. Slowly but surely, the foundation of my business was coming together. It wasn't going to happen overnight, but I was determined to make it work. The following week, I had my first real breakthrough. A company called Elara Tech reached out if I would be interested in helping them revamp their sales and marketing strategies. It wasn't a huge deal, but it was a start, a solid first step towards what I knew could be a lucrative consulting career. Jonah called me shortly afterward to check in on my progress. "I hear you've got your first gig lined up," he said, his voice full of approval. "That's great, Cassandra." "I'm starting small, but I'm getting there," I replied. "It feels good to finally be working for myself." "You're gonna do well," Jonah assured me. "Just keep your focus on building relationships and being honest with people. That's what will set you apart from the rest." His words stuck with me as I prepared for my first meeting with Elara Tech's leadership team. It was only a small job, but it was my chance to prove that I was more than just the woman who had been let go by Veltrick. I was a professional in my own right, and I was ready to show the world what I could do. The meeting went better than expected. I presented a strategic plan for Elara Tech, outlining steps they could take to increase their market share and streamline their operational processes. The team was impressed, and by the end of the meeting, they offered me a retainer to help them with their long-term growth plans. It wasn't a massive success, but it was enough to solidify my belief in myself. This was just the beginning. I wasn't just rebuilding my career, I was building a new one. And this time, it would be on my terms.
By the time the second week of April rolled around, I had settled into the rhythm of being my own boss. There was something both terrifying and exhilarating about it. The responsibility, the freedom, the pressure to succeed. Every email, every phone call felt like a step towards something bigger. My days were filled with meetings, networking, and the endless task of building my brand. But there was something deeply satisfying about knowing I was in control of my own destiny. As I worked with Tech, I felt my confidence grow. I wasn't just a consultant. I was someone people trusted, someone who could make a real difference. The work was meaningful. The clients I helped saw results, and that felt better than any commission check ever had. But just as I started to feel like I had my footing, Marcus called. It was a Monday morning, just as I was getting into my groove for the day. The phone rang, and I saw his name flash across the screen. My stomach twisted. I didn't know what to expect. The last time we'd spoken had been tense, to say the least. I hesitated for a moment before picking up. "Cassandra, it's Marcus," he began, his voice slightly strained. "I know we've had our differences, but we need to talk." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "What do you need, Marcus?" "I know things ended badly between us, but I need your help. The Horizon deal is falling apart. We're losing them, Cassandra. I need you to help us salvage this." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. It had been a few weeks since I had left Veltrick, and in that time, I had kept my distance from Marcus. After what he'd done to me, the idea of going back seemed impossible. But I knew that this wasn't just about him. It was about the business. It was about my integrity and proving that I could succeed without ever compromising my values. "I'm not sure how I can help," I said slowly, carefully weighing my words. "I'm no longer with Veltrick, Marcus. I'm with Crystalline now." There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Marcus spoke again, his tone softer. "I understand. I do. But the truth is, Crystalline is ahead of us in every way now. They're offering better products, better terms, and they're winning. Horizon's procurement team isn't impressed with our solution. We need something fresh, something that only you can offer." The flattery was obvious, but it didn't sway me. I had worked for years to build my reputation and credibility in the industry, and it wasn't going to be erased by a single deal. "I'm not your backup, Marcus. I'm not just someone you can call when things go wrong. I've worked hard to get where I am, and I'm not about to compromise my new position to help you fix a problem you created." Another silence followed. Marcus had never been one for patience, so I knew he was calculating his next move. "I understand," he finally said, his voice tinged with frustration. "But you know I'm right. You helped secure Horizon's business before. You know the procurement team. They trust you. You can turn this around." I closed my eyes, running through the possibilities. Marcus had a point. My relationship with Jonah and Horizon's team had been built over months of hard work. The thought of walking away from it completely made me uncomfortable. But I also knew that going back to Veltrick would mean sacrificing everything I had worked for, everything I had built with Crystalline. "No," I said finally. "I won't help you. If you want to fix your mess, you'll have to do it without me." Marcus's voice grew sharper. "You'll regret this, Cassandra." "I already don't," I said, hanging up the phone. The weight that lifted from my chest was immediate. I wasn't backing down. I wasn't going back. I had built something better, something I could be proud of. I had learned long ago that business wasn't just about making deals. It was about making a difference. I wasn't going to let anyone, especially Marcus, make me feel small again. Over the next few days, I focused completely on Crystalline. I immersed myself in the Horizon project, developing new strategies to ensure they stayed with us.
It wasn't just about securing the deal. It was about proving to myself that I didn't need Veltrick, that I didn't need Marcus to be successful. I had always known my worth, but now I was finally living it. One afternoon, as I sat with my team reviewing the next steps for Horizon's implementation, I got a text from Jonah. His message was short, but made my heart race with excitement. "We have made our decision. Crystalline is our partner. Let's get this signed." That was it. The moment I had been working toward had arrived. I knew that my efforts hadn't been in vain. Crystalline's commitment to integrity and innovation had won them the deal. I had done it. And I had done it on my own terms. Later that day, as I left the office to celebrate with my team, I took a moment to reflect. In just a few short months, I had built something new, something meaningful. I had turned the tables on my past and built a future for myself that was filled with opportunity, respect, and most importantly, the ability to call the shots. The satisfaction of seeing Crystalline's success was overwhelming. This wasn't just about winning. It was about proving that business done right, with honesty and integrity, was the only way to truly succeed. And it was just the beginning.